Legislator Hathaway.
Here.
Legislator Burkler. Here. Legislator Burns.
Here.
Legislator Gilbert.
Here.
Legislator Chartrand.
Here.
Legislator Moorhan.
Here.
Legislator Kalzer.
Here.
Legislator Osborne.
Here.
Legislator King.
Here.
Legislator Dahlhoff.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Report of the Finance and Rules Committee per Rule 6. Cassandra, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Rules Committee has met and they recommend immediate action on the pre-filed resolution.
Need a motion? Ron, second by Dick. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on any subject from the floor? Having seen no reaction, we'll move on to presentations. Before we do the introductions, Ryan had a few comments that he wanted to make.
So I had the opportunity today to go out with our highway superintendent, Tim Hunt. We went around to some of the projects the county was working on. And one thing I saw that I thought was kind of apt for our discussion today is a completely wooden bridge, which is in the town of Harrisburg. There's actually 2 wooden bridges, and even the trusses that go underneath are wooden.
And it's a 1 lane.
And it's 1 lane. And it got me thinking that, you know, we're talking about our facilities today. You know, how many places in the county do we have things like this wooden bridge where you look at it and you think, you know, how has this not been addressed in so many years? How is this still out there? And I think in a lot of ways we have the same situation with our facilities. And so whatever we decide today, let's just think about parts of our county infrastructure that are like this bridge. Things that people look at and think, man, we really need to start looking at some of this stuff and taking care of it. So I just thought it was a nice metaphor as I was driving around. Tim brought me all the way down to Osceola, so I had plenty of time to think. Probably a dangerous thing, right, Phil? So with that, I'll turn it over to our partners at CNS. You guys remember Chuck, of course. Chuck Brooks helped us with the JCC project, and then Patrick Courier has been the architect working with us for this project, and they've got a presentation.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present the concept report that we've been working on for the last few months there with some of the key staff from different departments within the county. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just reviewing the scope of this whole exercise pretty much was to delineate a scope for this proposed 2022 facilities improvement project. And with that scope, put together a schedule and proposed a cost estimate of what the probable cost would be to do all of the work. We looked at the existing facilities, we looked at the efficiency of the existing facilities as well as the makeup of the facilities, the structure of the facilities compared to current day codes, and just an overall analysis of the facilities, and then met with the individual departments and so forth to go through their goals and needs of there we go, Skirty. Their goals and needs. And then we met with smaller committees to define you know, those the scope of those portions of the buildings. And with that said, I'll move on to the next slide. Let's see here, we're gonna go right there. Okay, so this is an aerial view of the existing highway garage. In the upper right is the blue building there along East Road.
Do you want to make sure that they know that they have the same slides here?
Oh yes, so if you want to follow along in your books, they're right in the same order there that Chuck has pointed out. So the upper right there is the existing highway garage, and what we're looking at there is an adaptive reuse of that building. The exterior's been recently redone. Upgrades to the windows, roofing, and so forth, and insulation. So we're good there, but it's going to require some interior upgrades to meet current codes and standards and such. I'll get into more details on that when we get into the actual slides on the building. We are looking at relocating a couple of departments from the DSS building over to that building, one of them being soil and water and the other rural development, and we'll talk a little more about that when we get to the DSS building. Now on the other side of East Road, or before I jump over to the other side of the East Road, we are looking at also an alternative to demolish the existing sign shop and the existing welding shop, and create more parking, a retaining wall, and just clean up that whole site over there. Those buildings have been delineated prior to us as, beyond their useful life, and we'll get into more about the structures there as we go through the presentation. On the other side of the East Road, on the upper left, the blue building there, we're looking at tearing down the existing cold storage barn and reconstructing that. That building will not be heated. We're looking at potentially sprinklering it, just because of the amount of equipment in there and the value of that equipment. We can always put that in as an alternate if you wish, but we do have that figured into the price of the overall project. Just below that, the large blue square is what we're looking at for the proposed highway garage, and that would have a direct in. You drive into the building and drive straight through, so nobody has to back up, turn around, and drive out. We worked closely with Tim on that, and he was very helpful on the layout of that building. And then just below that is a smaller blue square there, and what that is a wash bay building. So that you can pull into the site, drive through the wash bay building with the plow trucks and other vehicles, and then pull right into the highway garage. So this is the floor plan of the existing highway garage. In the floor plan here, we're showing parks and recreation in there, and rural development, soil, water. They're all located on the right-hand side of the building. We set it up with one point of entry that we can kind of control, who's coming in and out and so forth. And then each individual department would have their own entrances into those departments. One of the nice things here is we could share services such as the restrooms, the break room, and other amenities to the building rather than, building separate areas for them. So it was a pretty good use of that space, and we were still able to maintain quite a bit of storage area to the left of it and top, and then there's storage down below, and we have storage within the mezzanine above. This slide here shows a concept drawing of the proposed highway garage. As I mentioned, we can drive directly through the building from the wash bay into the building and straight out. There's a mezzanine in this building that we're looking at for storage. We'll also have our mechanical systems for the office areas. Those office areas and break room would have heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Ventilation, we'll be looking at fresh air intake to make sure that we're meeting current standards for air exchanges. And let's see, the welding shop would be in the lower right-hand corner. We'll have areas for the signage for some of the parts of the sign shop to utilize areas within there for storage and just as a base location working out of.
Can you?
Yep.
Can you go back to that?
Yep.
Can you use your pointer and show where some of this stuff is versus just saying it? You can't really read it.
Oh, yeah, it'll
Yeah,
show up
read that
better.
here.
I'm sorry, yeah. So in the back of your book here is 11 by 17 drawings that will show up a little bit better. Oh, is there one of those? Oh, it is.
Yeah, that's
Kind of,
interesting.
yeah. So just a,
I could always go up and Vanna White it,
no, I think we can do that. is, so if you want to follow along, in the back of the book, these drawings are in the same order as this. We have the floor plan for the highway garage, which is more legible than on the screen. And what we have is an entrance up top here where you can come in. The offices are located there. The highway superintendent is located there. There's restrooms, locker rooms there, and the break room. Here is, well, down here would be the overhead door where you drive in. I'm sorry, up here. You drive in, the plow trucks can pull into the side, back up, and drive straight out. Over here we have part storage, and then we have maintenance over on this side with their own overhead doors, and then we have a welding shop down in the corner.
If you're trying to kind of understand how it fits on the site, if you go back to the that first slide, it looks like this, where he was pointing out the overall site. You can see arrows around this large blue box on the bottom left-hand corner. That's the big
So
square.
that blue box right there is the wash area?
No, so this one here is the wash area, ma'am? That one? This
Little one.
Yeah, the
Okay.
little one.
All right.
This bigger building, the square, where the arrows go pointing in the three sides.
Okay.
That's the proposed highway garage. So if you're trying to, get an idea about how these fit together, it's in the same orientation on your sheet.
So I'm looking at this welding shop on the bigger plan. I don't care about the landscape or that part.
Sure.
I'm looking at the actual building.
Yes.
This is the old building, this is the existing highway garage that we talked about.
No, I'm talking about the new one,
Yeah.
the blue, the big blue building.
This one here.
So we've got the welding shop down in the corner of the
Down in the corner. What are they gonna weld in?
This is the layout.
It's more, yeah,
It
it's
doesn't look like you can bring a plow in there,
Okay.
a plow car. It's only got double swinging doors. So, what's a welding shop gonna weld, Tim?
Hopefully, they don't weld anything when we're done. But
Then why are we putting one in?
Well,
they're gonna always do miscellaneous stuff, right? A small piece here or there.
They don't weld on the plows?
Very rarely, very rarely. But that originally had an overhead door in it.
It does.
not
It
have
does.
an
It does.
overhead door
It's-
from the outside?
Yep.
It's an overhead door.
Yeah, that's what I
Where's
thought.
it show that?
So it should be
Oh,
large
right in
enough
the
for a
corner,
pickup
that's the
truck.
door.
right
Yeah,
there.
it's a roll-up door.
Roll up.
That's why I
But
was
you still couldn't really put a plow through that, could you?
No, but I think, like Tim said, is, it can be used, it's going to be set up mainly as a maintenance shop / welding shop. If they've got some, whatever it might be, they need to weld something to put together for whatever little project they might have going on, they would do it there rather than out in the open area.
More than likely to do it out in the open area if you got a weld on a plow then.
If it was on a plow,
They do a lot of small fabrication, and that'll be done in that little shop. And that's where the equipment, tools will be. But if they do need to weld on a truck, yes, they would absolutely roll the welder out into the big shop and weld out there.
And we did talk about different locations. We haven't keyed in on them specifically yet, but where the welder could be connected to. So there'd be different areas within the whole building where they can do welding.
Rocks.
Yeah.
So how many bays have you got for trucks?
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for plow trucks, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other like
Trucks.
areas here for storage and one there. And then this right down the middle, this long rectangle you see here is the trench drain where everybody will flow right through there. But there's plenty of room here for, other vehicles other than just the plow trucks.
How many plow trucks do we have, Tim?
We have 6 plow trucks, 4 mainline and 2 spares. And that should accommodate all 6, if I'm correct.
I think maybe that was one up here that we were going to put.
Yeah, one of them will be back straight in,
Straight in.
right there.
There.
And then the rest of them will be parked diagonally. Then there should be 3 loaders in there, and then the rest will be pickup trucks for parking lots and stuff like that. It's tight.
It looks like, Are you content with it, Tim?
Yeah, I think it'll work. Could we use more? Absolutely, but you know, everything's a cost-benefit analysis, and this fits on the site, and it does do what we need it to do. We worked pretty hard to get everything in there.
Yeah. And, you know, nothing today, just to keep in mind, is nothing's cast in stone yet. We may end up adding a little bit of this, maybe taking a little off the cold storage building or something. You know, the intention of this whole exercise, this phase, is to get us to where we've got a pretty good scope and a pretty good budget and schedule to determine, you know, is this what the county wants to do, you know, go ahead with. But there will be, you know, through the next 4 or 5 months, there's quite a bit of work that's going to have to be done to, you know, develop this to the next phase and then to the final phase of going to construction and so forth. So these are concept phase, keep in mind.
Yeah, this estimate's probably an estimate phase too.
Yep.
You get $244 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
You think that's really practical?
I do, and we'll get into the estimate here shortly as we move through the slides, yes. Yeah. You know, and you've got to look at the size of a project. $244 doesn't buy you much if you've got a 2,000 square foot building, you know, because, but you've got the efficiency of the size of the project that's going to bring your square foot cost down. You know, what we would do is, you know, at 60% and 100% is developing comprehensive itemized, you know, cost estimate of the project, and we'll be utilizing Trophy Point, and that's all they do is cost estimating. So we've got a 5% contingency figured into here too.
Yeah, 5% on 244 isn't much.
Yep. Yeah.
Let me tell you how much it is. That only puts you at 256.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At today's cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. This is steel building.
Yes, pre-engineered steel building. You've got to keep in mind too is a lot of people, you know, square foot, breaking it down to a square foot cost is at the next phase, we're going to do a detailed, comprehensive, you know, analysis of the cost. Square foot cost, you know, a lot of this area is just a wide open area. This whole area here, there's nothing there except wide open space. You've got concrete slab and a roof. You know, that's all you've got in that whole area in the trench. Well, the outside walls, you know, the exterior walls, but the 2/3 of the building right there is just one wide open space, you know. So, you know, that you've got to take that into account too, is what type of building is it? You know, for, you know, a new office building, you're going to be more expensive because you've got more bathrooms, you've got, you know, more offices, you've got break rooms, more kitchens, stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of that has, you know, an effect on your overall cost.
The other thing I'll add is that I think you guys are familiar with CNS as a company, and you know we have a construction company as well. You know, we are a rep of Nucor Buildings. I think is you know, every company that does these pre-engineered metal buildings, they kind of align themselves with one of the you know, Varco Pruden or Nucor. We put up a lot of Nucor buildings, and so we have the benefit of recent projects that we've actually constructed. The other thing is that we have done, I don't know, Patrick, what would you say, probably 7 or 8 highway garages just in the last probably 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, just in our group, we've done a handful of these.
We've got the experience here with CNS doing a building here. I think you know what I mean.
I do.
Quite a bit overrun.
Our cost estimate on that one was within a couple percentage points of where the bids came in. You know, so I would agree with Patrick that I think that it is a reasonable cost estimate at this stage of the game, at the conceptual stage of the game.
Okay, this is the cold storage building. We're looking at a building that would be 150 feet by 50 feet. It'll be a non-insulated building. We'll have let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 overhead doors on there. We didn't put an overhead door in each bay, just felt it wasn't necessary from talking, with everybody on it. And we've got a couple man doors in this building here. We'll even have just a stone floor. We're looking at efficiencies, speaking of the budget, to save money. We've got to look at function and efficiency, and naturally give the community what's needed, but not, go overboard on things. And we talked about a concrete slab in here, and it was brought up that, we could do compacted stone with some finer crushed stone on top of it, and it would work fine for what the county needs. So this building here is pretty bare bones. We'll probably have a concrete wall up about 4 feet high, just to protect the siding and all from getting beat up. So from there on up, it's all the pre-engineered steel, metal siding, and metal roofing. And if you want to put in a dry pipe sprinkler system, we could do so. And as I said earlier, we can always do that like as an alternate, and decide at that point if you want to do it or not, depending on how the bids come in the future.
There's no concrete floor in it?
No concrete floor. At this point, that's what we're discussing.
When the cost of it, you got this priced out at 1.1.
Nope.
And there's no concrete floor in it.
Right.
Right now, it's a run-a-crush driving surface within the confines of that building. So I'm hearing from you that you have some concern about the cost.
Absolutely.
And I understand that. Going back to the JCC building, which you brought up, I'll bring up that our first cost estimate, the one that CNS was just a couple percentage points of the final construction cost of the building ultimately. And I think if you were to go back into the documents that we prepared, even at the conceptual phase, we weren't really that far off, of the final cost of the building. The first cost estimate that was prepared that you're probably referencing wasn't one that we prepared. So coming into this project, one of the things we talked about was that this phase is really important to understand what the real cost of this project is going to be. We didn't just want to run into a project without vetting out the scope, talking to the key stakeholders and seeing what types of where we wanted to put people, what buildings we wanted to put together, and coming up with a cost estimate that was going to give you a realistic idea of what this project was going to cost. Because I think maybe in the previous one, some people came into the project with not a realistic appreciation of how much that project was going to ultimately cost. We wanted to avoid that in this project by doing this first phase conceptual work to give you more information before you voted on the project. So that's what I was trying to say, is I do think that this cost estimate is much closer to what the final cost is going to be than the cost estimate that was prepared before we were engaged for the Lewis County Ed Center project, if that makes sense. And I don't know if Ryan, if I said that right, or if anybody has anything to add to that.
I think there's probably only one person here that's interested in relitigating that for the 8,000th time, so let's keep going.
This is the Department of Social Services site. But before I do that, I want to have Chuck just show everybody. It's small, but he'll talk to you a little bit about this 3D model we did of the existing highway site.
So we prepared a massing model because sometimes it's a little bit easier to see things in 3 dimensions, and as opposed to just looking at plans. And we're going to leave this here so you can get an idea of how these buildings might lay out. But he showed you up there and kind of oriented you to the site. This building right here represents the existing highway garage, the one that's there right now. This is East Road, and this is your fuel facility that's there right now. Your existing sign shop right now is over here. This is the sign shop that I came out several years ago and had a column that was, you know, not plumbed. We've had to fix that sign shop a couple times, and they don't even, you know, park vehicles in it anymore. So that's space that's not being utilized. This project proposes to demolish the sign shop, which I think was part of the plan anyway, and extend the existing retaining wall around the corner and provide some additional parking. Your existing welding shop is up in this area right here. You can see in the proposed that welding shop is no longer there either. This smaller building, which was what you were asking about, the wash bay, this is the new wash bay. The new highway garage, proposed cold storage building. For those familiar with the highway site, you know that we have currently an exit out onto East Road that's right across from the parking lot, but much too close to the intersection, you know, for vehicles that are making quick turns onto East Road, and there's a little bit of a traffic issue there. The other thing is that the grading down here is very challenging because this fuel facility is set. I mean, we're not changing that elevation, so we had to build a site around this that fuel facility. So there is an existing entrance on this side of the site that we're proposing to develop further, allowing a cleaner drive-through off of East Road and a safer entrance and exit into the site that doesn't put it so close to this intersection and, you know, out of line of sight of vehicles turning left.
So you'll be on A12?
Yes. Yeah. There is an entrance right there right now. I think there's a farmer's truck trail that kind of utilizes that entrance and comes up the backside of what will be. Right now, you have a bunch of vehicles parked on open gravel up there. So we're proposing to improve that already existing entrance, and then that gives us more options to deal with stormwater down here also. So while Patrick's talking through the Department of Social Services building, I'll just.
So I have a question.
Yep.
You got school buses still coming in there to fuel?
Nothing changes with the fuel facility.
But they're gonna go in on 812. Is that what you said?
I think the way that we talked about it, and Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were coming off of East Road and going on to 812, correct?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one-way traffic this
Yeah,
way.
that sounds better.
So that's the way we discussed it.
Thank you.
So.
That's it.
Do we own that property, the road, 812, the farmer?
No, it's the county property. Actually, that road is within the property boundaries as well. That truck trail. As well.
That was actually a driveway into a house.
What's that?
There was a house there at one time, and that was the driveway to the house, as I remember.
That predates me. I mean, I know that where we have the JCC Ed Center, I believe it's the same gentleman that owns all that property behind the Ed Center. And that entrance is to the southern end of that property up into the farm field. There is a
goes up there to access his fields.
and there's a structure up there, like a utility structure that's got on the southern end of this field.
Okay, so here we've got an aerial view of the Department of Social Services building. It's kind of got the roof appears to be like a light beige color there, on Outer Stowe Street there. Behind that, we have a storage building, and we have another storage building that we're looking at having it demolished and creating a little maintenance shop for buildings and grounds facility people. And we'll get into a floor plan of that here shortly. And then there's also that little blue building there in the, whoops, right there. That little blue building, we're creating a new building back here, would also have storage for the Board of Elections for their voting machines. And we're looking at relocating them from downtown here over to the upper right-hand corner there of the DSS building. With this building, I've got some floor plans here we'll go through, and I'll talk a little bit about the upgrades to the building. So I want to show you some pictures of the exterior first before we get into those. This is standing with your back to the public safety building, looking at the west side, the entrance off the driveways there. And what we're looking at doing with that is, the photograph comes out a little bit dark there, but completely redoing the building envelope, upgrading the insulation in the building, upgrading the exterior materials, As you can see, the metal siding is beyond its useful life, starting to get beat up down near the ground, which is typical of siding. On all the buildings, we're looking at trying to keep the metal up off the ground. The other problem we have here is that all the water sheds to the north and south towards the road and towards the back of the site, and they've been having a lot of problems with ice building up on the building. I spent a lot of time with Matt O'Connor walking through the building and talking about issues they have with this building with the age that it is. So we're going to address those issues by going to internal roof drains on the building so that everything's collected internally and then it filters into your storm water management system. That way we don't have any water running off, we don't have to worry about scuppers, downspouts, or anything else. We'll rebuild the facades on the mansards, that white part around the top. We're going to redo that with a parapet wall that goes around, and this other picture might be a little bit lighter. Here's a picture looking at some outer stove, and here's one there. You can see the lighter brick on the corners. We would maintain the brick that's there, and then pull off the siding that's there to strip it down to the studs, as we will with the interior of the building. And we're going to be completely redoing all of the systems of the building. There's a chance where we can redo any electrical that's necessary in those exterior walls, re-insulate them, put on the new brick veneer, which will be a slightly contrasting color more than likely. The color on the corners pretty much ties into your public safety building, and we'll look at brick samples that might kind of complement both buildings, being that they're in the same area. This is looking from Stowe Street up, from the corner. It's a little bit far away, but let's see, I might be able to actually zoom into that. Looks, no, that. But actually I can, here we're looking at some signage up there, but we haven't gotten too far into this. But what we'd like to do is emphasize that corner of the building and actually create this building with a new identity. It's going to have a single point of entry for all the departments. We've been referring to it right now as the Human Services Building, which who knows how that may adapt as we go along, but that's what we're referring to it as. The main entry will be back here, but we'll have some signage up here that delineates it as the Human Services Building.
A quick question
Yeah.
again on this. How much of the building is actually going to be left when you
Yep.
tear it down? I mean, basically tear it down. Go
So,
ahead.
yeah, so here's the demolition plan. This shows all of the departments that are within the building, Gregory. In upper left, we have soil and water, rural development. We have Office of the Aging in there, and Department of Social Services. So we have all those departments within here, but we're literally looking at gutting the whole building, redoing the electrical, redoing all of the plumbing, mechanical systems and everything, and keeping the shell. I'll go to the next slide, and this might answer your question is more or less. We were able to work with all these individual departments, and then collectively work with them and say, how do you feel about, the location of your department, the size of your department? We compared the existing size of their departments to the proposed size, and everybody was very happy with the proposed layout of the building without putting an addition onto it. Initially, there was thoughts of putting an addition onto this building. Unfortunately, the east side up here, the grade drops off steeply on that whole side, so that's not ideal to put an addition on. The back side here is all pavement, and then we have some other buildings over there. This side over here is all parking area, and then along the front is all parking. So we were able to work within the confines of the existing building, and this is about 20,000 square feet. I just finished a project in Watertown for JRC, which is now the ARC of Jefferson County. And that was a 40,000 square foot building, and used that as a cross-reference for cost estimating against the costs we were coming up with here on this, which we'll get to again, when we get to the estimating side. But that was a complete gut and rehab. The building was over about 50 years old, and they just said, hey, if we're going to go in and start moving walls around and doing all this, we might as well do everything at once. Bring it up to current energy standards, you know, and just make the place more efficient and functional for their use.
And you reviewed the roof on this building?
Yes, we're going to be redoing the roof with a new roof. It'll be a tapered rigid insulation with a rubber membrane. And as I said before, what we'll do is we're going to, on the north and south, pitch the roof back onto itself and put internal roof drains there. And when I say we're going to, that's at this point in time, the concept phase is what we're contemplating doing. I like to see, you know, water collected internally, as long as it's internal, and we talk with buildings and grounds and others, and it's not going to freeze up like it is right now on the building. I've got photos of the ice building up on the building, and it's awful. I didn't bring them with me, but, you know.
Basically, the only thing, basically answer my own question. The only thing really you're gonna keep are like a few studs or what?
Okay, so yes, I'm sorry, I kind of went around about on that, but to answer your first question, yes, we're keeping the structure. So we've got the whole structure, we've got the slab, we have the basement, and you know, your site work on a new building, there's a lot of work just to get to where you can, you know, prepare a site for the first floor, for the slab, for the structure and all that. So, you know, even though we're upgrading the building, there's still a lot of value to the building that's there.
This is a pre-engineered metal building, so all these walls that you see internally they're just non-load bearing stud walls.
Right.
So the structural portions of the building are staying put, along with the foundation and the superstructure. We're working, you know, within that. So
Basically the metal studs on the exterior walls.
well, it's a pre-engineered metal building, so they have, you know, large rolled steel columns, you know, the moment frames that are part of the superstructure. So the skeleton of the building is staying intact. It's all those interior non-load bearing walls that are being
the exterior
modified.
walls will strip down to the studs, and we'll reutilize the exterior
Right,
walls.
yeah.
So would the skeleton be the next thing to give way then? And or, I mean, that's going to last the longest of any building component, I would think.
So that's usually not the thing that becomes a problem in the pre-engineered metal buildings, right? What happens, like Patrick was saying, is you put up these pre-engineered metal buildings, the skeleton's strong, the skeletons, they'll quote you a 50-year life, but in reality they last quite a bit longer than that. I mean, as evidenced by your existing highway garage is much older than that, and the primary superstructure of your existing highway garage is largely okay. It's the other pieces and parts that start to deteriorate. Well, you know, you run metal siding, or the pre-engineered metal building metal siding, all the way down to the ground in Lowville. As you get closer to the ground, you know, that starts to deteriorate over years of use. All the interior, you know, spaces needs change, and so now the rooms that worked great when they built the building, they're no longer the right fit for the occupants of the building. The pieces that you see start to become look deteriorated don't mean that the building itself is you know, is deteriorated. The primary structure itself might still be just as sound as it was, you know, when it was built.
And it is.
Yeah,
We
right.
got up above the ceilings and looked at it, looked down the walls.
That's right.
And the structure itself is in fine shape. Yeah, so as I mentioned, upgrading all the mechanical, plumbing, electrical security systems, we talk about that a lot throughout. Door access points on all the buildings, we'll get into more details about that as design moves along. But this has a single point of entry. I can get that to work again right here. It's facing the public safety building, which I'm referring to as the west side of the building because it's kind of on a 45-degree of the north access. But so there'll be security right there as you come in. All of the different departments, all of the different departments rotate right off of the core of the building. All the public spaces we have here in the center reception and interview rooms, and then we have large meeting rooms, and then in the back corner we have a break room, so which can also double as a multi-purpose room. We're going to upgrade all the life safety systems, fire alarm, sprinkler. Right now the building's not sprinklered, and there's several items within the building that just don't meet current codes, New York State building codes. I talked about the insulation and the rest there. This is the maintenance shop behind. Yes.
How is that single point of access going to work as far as egress in an emergency like a fire?
Yep. Good question. So the coming in the door here, everything flows around like that and out. So there's no dead end corridors. We still have this door over here where Office for the Aging is. That will be maintained as an emergency egress. It will also be for employees to come in and out. The employees can come in and out here also with this door. So we're not going to completely close off those other doors.
Okay, so the single point of access is for customers?
Correct, yes. For the public, yes. Yeah. And these other ones will be controlled by car key, but they'll still be means of egress and exiting. Yes.
Okay.
Now, while I'm still here, this is the area that we delineated for Board of Elections in the back corner, is relocating them to this building. And they've got all the space they need there to perform their functions, with their voting machines being located over in here. So that's just across the parking lot, on the back side of the parking lot. This is that blue square box that I showed initially. That would be a new structure, and instead of building onto the building, we've got, I forget the square footages right offhand, but there's this area to the left is for the Board of Elections, which is a little training room storage and voting storage. And then the area to the right is the workshop for your facility people. And that's got a janitor's closet, toilet room, and office back here, and an overhang for storage of some smaller equipment, mowers, and so forth.
Is that one bathroom going to fit with the occupancy load of that building?
Yes, because the right-hand side, we really have no occupancy load. It's a workshop. There might be 2 or 3 people.
But
and
when they're in there working, you might have 2 or 3 people per machine. They got 30 machines.
You're talking about for the voting area.
The voting area.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the maintenance shop.
No.
So the voting area, at this point, we don't have a bathroom there. They've got their bathrooms right inside the door over on across the driveway, which meets the New York State Plumbing Code requirements. As long as they're within 500 feet, they've got access here, because there's nobody over there working all day long. They're going in, they're doing a little bit of work, they're in there for short periods of time. But it wouldn't be hard now that we ended up adding a bathroom here that wasn't originally there. We could always plug in a bathroom over here.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah. And in the realm of the project, these are, when you go from one phase to the next, these are items that we want to revisit. Always revisit where you're at, how you got there, and so we've already gotten a few comments back. Since the meetings, people have thought of a couple things. We're keeping track of that. The next step would be design development, where you sit down and you go through the same meetings with the same groups, and then you get everybody together and say, hey, does this still work for you? But I could see this having another bathroom there for them. They didn't request one, but I think if we were to talk about it more, that'd probably be the good.
They've got a lot smaller space now,
Yep.
and they're having problems with one bathroom. That's why I just brought it up.
So with the this building here, without going into a lot of details, we're getting rid of the game toilet rooms over in this area, and we've got 4 private bathrooms, unisex private bathrooms
For
there.
the workers?
Well, some of these are for workers and some are public.
Plans or-
So the two here facing the corridor are for public use primarily because of the meeting rooms, the interview rooms. These two on the left are specifically for Department of Social Services. We have two over here that, three, actually, 1, 2, 3 on that corner, where we can delineate which ones we want to be accessible to the public and which one's private. And that's not to say if somebody's in that corner of the building that's a staff member
Exactly.
and one's being used, they can use the other one. But we have just as many toilet fixtures as we had originally in the building. We just set it up in a different fashion that meets what current people are looking for is going towards the privacy ones where you go in, you lock the door, and no one's walking in, you know, at the same time where you're walking in and out.
Can you go back to the other one now?
Yes.
Nine-
Yep.
900 square feet's enough for their voting machines? And they used to say, what, 100 square feet per machine?
Yeah.
Now that they're going to the iPad, they've reduced.
I think they're planning on having separate iPad storage space, so just that voting machine space
Yeah.
should be enough.
Yeah, they're keeping the iPads open, you know?
But the square footages have changed because we talk about that quite a bit. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it used to be quite a bit. It was 100 square feet per machine. Yeah, and there's 30 machines I think you have there. Somewhere 28, 30 machines, I
Yeah.
forget right offhand, so.
All you have to be able to do is set them up so that if any member of the public, even somebody in a wheelchair, wanted to come and inspect the machine, they had enough room to wheel all the way around. So we can do this so they can pull one out, it can be inspected and then put back.
Previously, though, they
Yes.
weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
They had to have 100 square feet per
Yeah.
machine, as
Correct.
it said. But
And-
the iPads have changed that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Is this a secured building? I mean,
Yes, it'll be a secure building, yep. We talked about, they would like windows in there, and we talked about having these windows up high, so they'd be above, like, so you're not just looking in. There'll be windows so you can get some natural light, and they'll be fixed, so they're not operable, no one's gonna leave them open, because we do have fresh air, makeup air for the area, which would be, you know, your heating, ventilation, air conditioning. And it's actually easier to manage a building with fixed windows. So those will be up high for security purposes. And we do have, Greg, we have a layout where we laid out all the machines. We measured the individual machines. I just didn't have them shown on here. And we've got an aisle going down the middle with the machines each side. You
door
get-
on each side.
If they get an impound, an election where the machines are impounded and stuff, there's room to secure that to the standard that the state wants? Have they talked to that about you?
We haven't gotten on any subjects of machines that were impounded, but
Anyone
that's,
ask that question, because occasionally you get an election that somebody goes to the courts and then they have to put the machines in a different secure area.
Got it.
A certain amount of locking up and everything.
Yep, which makes sense, but we hadn't gotten onto that subject yet.
Machines, I just offered for
Yeah.
thought.
No, that's a good point, because we hadn't made it to that point yet. They didn't bring it up. I met with everybody within their department, but we can talk about that, and definitely I think we could, you know, take this storage room over here and even just split that in half, you know, and have one room just big enough where you could put a machine in there like you're saying, that gets locked down. No one's got access to it until they decide, until it's been inspected or such.
I haven't been with them in 3 or 4 years, it may have changed, but at one time it was.
Yeah, we've got a lot of different moving parts to this whole project, because looking at trying to consolidate all these smaller projects all as one bigger project, you know, and get everything done at one time.
I think the efficiency that you gain, though, when you combine them all, Patrick's really realized in the process of talking to all these different departments. You know, if you have sporadic projects of trying to service this department and then that department and then that department, you lose the ability to make use of all the facilities and see the big picture. So I think this exercise was well worth it to get an idea on how best to make efficient use of the existing space that you have.
across those two different sites?
We have a lot of shared spaces here that were never shared before because they just weren't in the right location. These interview rooms in the center here were towards the front of the building, and they were used by Department of Social Services, but they couldn't be used by anyone else per se. And now it's set up to where there's a lot more shared spaces within the building now than there were before. And that's how we were able to, you know, keep all these departments in here. And we did move soil and water out, which gave us a little room, more room in rural development. We moved them out into the existing highway garage. So that helped a lot there without having to build an addition onto here. We were able to utilize, you know, facilities that you already have.
Can we talk about operating while you're doing a fairly major rehab in that building and stuff? Jenny, how does that work?
Well, that's a really good question because I don't know the answer. But I think we would have to be moving off-site someplace. And where that is, there's no determination.
Can people still work from home during
Not
that?
100%, no.
We have to have some walk-in space available for social services, so we would have to rent some type of storefront somewhere in Lewis County.
Okay, thanks.
And even when they're working from home, some functions still have to be performed back in the
Right.
secure areas.
We did have a number, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but Jenny had kind of done some preliminary thoughts of we would need a space for X amount of people, and I thought it was somewhere around 28 to 30. Do you remember that?
Around 30.
Around 30.
Per
So
day.
we would, per day. So we could have like alternating work from home, but we still have to have a space where people can walk off the street and
Right.
get services. So a space for 28 to 30, which, you know, if we put our heads together and looked around Lewis County, I'm sure there's a storefront or two that we could come up with. But yes, we wouldn't be able to, I don't think, you know, CNS or the folks that have been kind of in these planning discussions think it's very feasible to keep our employees in the building while we're doing that.
Yeah, no, and it can be done.
That's no big deal.
No,
You can rent,
you know.
there's companies out there, you can rent the whole dang thing, bring it in on trailer, drop it, and 6 months later it goes away.
Yeah, and
It is somewhat of a big deal for the rest of us.
Hi, Jenny.
Just like the state requires us a 6-month notice in advance of the location we're moving into for them to review it.
yeah.
So there's a lot of.
Plus you have to have a secure computer lines, right?
Everything, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
And
can't be
then
just a trailer.
right, and the record storage, depending on, you know, if we're moving out, is there secure places to keep records? Being able to ferry back and forth records and other things like that.
And how long would you anticipate this building being
Vacated
demolished?
for? Probably about 6 to 8 months.
So if you figured a year, you'd be comfortable.
Oh, yeah, yeah, more than comfortable, yeah.
And the cost, it's got to be tied to the cost of the construction stuff. too.
For the relocation.
We're incur cost for whatever we rent
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, in the ARC project that I'm finishing up right now, that actually got the ribbon cutting middle of July in Watertown. As I said, that's 40,000 square feet. We designed it as 2 phases so that they could actually occupy the building. And then they had a CM come in and they weighed out the benefits. And it's a lot of work to relocate. They had to go through all the Department of Health and, you know, state agencies to get approval on where they were going, how long they were going to be there. They've got to get approval to go back into the new building. So it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of red tape. But, you know, if you weigh out the hassle of trying to be in the building during the construction, it's just beneficial to move out. If you can find space to put the people into.
So if we get our garage done first, they can go to the garage.
There we go. And we will be looking at, you know, phasing. What we don't want them to do is start any work on the DSS building until they've had ample time to order everything and possibly even store it, you know, because then we know everything's there. That will move it along a lot quicker. So once we have a selected contractor, we can really get into the fine details of where are you ordering your doors from? Where are you ordering your windows? What are your longest lead times? And how long is it going to take you to do the demolition? and then they can really key in on the fact of, you know, let's not start until we know we've got materials coming.
2023 then.
No.
You see the lead time on some of this stuff?
Oh, you talking about lead times? Well, we naturally the first thing, yeah, there's a long lead time on
It's
certain
only
stuff,
12 weeks
but
for a
they're
storm.
still getting caught up also from the pandemic. Everybody was shut down for a whole year, so you know, hopefully people get back to work and you know, we get things moving along and you know, and get caught up. But we'll be watching that all as we get closer to the time frame, what the lead times are, and all that.
I'll also tell you that in some of our existing construction projects that were, you know, in design pre-COVID that are in construction now, we've been working with contractors at, you know, alternate approaches that they have proposed with shorter lead times. You know, we're running into issues with some types of rebar that can be replaced with different ways of reinforcing concrete and things like that. So, you know, we're working with existing construction projects right now, trying to move those along, and you know, with the supply chain issues. Hopefully it gets better, but if it doesn't, you know, that's the collaborative process during construction that Patrick's talking about.
And it's going to be key. It'll help because you're right. There's long lead times, and as Chuck mentioned with rebar, there's alternatives. You can use fiber meshing concrete. You know, is it preferred? We'd have to evaluate. You know, there's pros and cons to everything, but we'll definitely look at, you know, if there's a long lead time on a certain item, is what are our other options? You know, do we wait for that, or do we have another option that, you know, may be sufficient? I'll move through some of these rather quickly. I'm not sure exactly what the time frame was tonight, but all this information is in the report. Hazardous materials survey came up fairly good results. We've got small amounts of asbestos transite board in the existing highway garage, nothing major, just a couple locations. There's some caulk that has asbestos in it. There's a little bit of lead-based paint in there, which isn't a big deal for lead-based paint if you encapsulate it, or you know, you're fine with that. It's all how you handle it. There's some universal special waste, what they call is like your lighting ballasts and so forth. Question or?
Well, I thought we took care of that lead-based.
Oh.
Because didn't we have decoded?
We had some, but we didn't disturb it all. We had to clean up everything. We disturbed some of the floors and stuff and contaminated everything. But there was also some left there that we had disturbed, like your encapsulation.
Yeah. So, and these aren't any main items, but we wanted to have them. You know, we wanted to have all this stuff revisited because we talked about whether it needed to be done or not. But you know, it's like we wanted to make sure we knew what was there and what wasn't, and some lead-based paint showed up. So, you know, and then there's things like the PCB light ballasts and fluorescent mercury bulbs, certain things like that. It's just, if they remove them, they just have to follow proper protocol on how to get rid of them and so forth. Department of Social Services building, there was no asbestos that was found to our knowledge. There is some universal special waste, such as light bulbs and batteries. Existing science shop and welding shop. At that point, we weren't looking at doing anything with those two projects, those two buildings, and then we added them in. You'll see they're highlighted on our estimate as a separate line item cost, because towards the end of our concept phase, we decided to, hey, these buildings were delineated a long time ago as being at the end of their useful life, and let's see if we can put that in the project, get them taken down, and utilize the site better for parking and so forth. So those we didn't do an assessment on, but we did a visual where our engineer walked through the site there with Matt and looked at things, and he didn't see anything alarming. So we're not too concerned there, but we would, at the next phase, be sure to go in and do a more comprehensive study in those buildings. I'll let Chuck talked briefly about the geotechnical borings and the slide after that, and then we'll get on to the budget.
So, this that you're looking at right here is the proposed new highway facility site. For those that have been out there, where the that site has some fairly significant grade changes over it, and if you're going to use that to any degree, you know, these vehicles don't like to have significant grade changes over, you know, inside the pavement. So we wanted to know, especially up by where the proposed building was going to be, were we going to run into any issues with bedrock and things like that. And we needed to know what was going to be required of the building foundations, because that can significantly impact the project cost and schedule as well. We had some good news when we did the geotechnical investigation. We did 5 borings on this site, 3 around the proposed highway garage and 2 up by the existing cold storage building, which is similarly located to the proposed cold storage building. And we looked at prior geotechnical investigations that were done in support of previous projects, including the fuel facility, which I think was mainly test pits. What we found was that there is what they call like general fill material, anywhere from 2.5 feet down to like 4.5 feet down across the whole site for the most part. That material, you know, includes cinders and other waste, you know, not structural fill or not embankment material, but so we found that we would have to remove at least 2.5 to 4.5 feet, depending on where it is on the site, of material to construct the buildings. The good news is you have to be down 4.5 to 5 feet anyway to be below frost, so we're not having to remove to a greater extent than we would just to construct the buildings. So that was good news. And that's very typical of a lot of these highway sites. You know, what we find. Sometimes we find unsuitable material much deeper than that. So that was actually good news we got from this this boring. We encountered bedrock approximately 26 feet down. Some of the weathered bedrock was higher up, but the bedrock that's going to cause us excavation issues if we had to dig it out, we didn't encounter until about 26 feet down. That is very important to us, especially up by borings 1, 2, and 3 where the proposed highway garage is, because if you look in that bottom left corner, you can see a number of lines in the proposed grading plan that are very close together. That's an area of cut that has to be brought down in order to make use of that area of the site. So the good news there is that we're still well above the competent bedrock. It's an excavatable part of the site. That's good news for the project and allows us to make use of that area of the site and fit all the things that we wanted to on that site. We also did 2 infiltration tests on this site to inform our stormwater design. Because we are, it is a significant amount of impervious surface that's being proposed for the project. There's stormwater management practices that will need to be integrated into the project to meet DEC requirements. So while our geotechnical engineer was out there doing the borings, we had them take 2 infiltration tests as well. So that moving into the next phase of the project, they won't have to remobilize in order to do that. The proposed or the recommended foundations are all shallow footings with slab on grade, which is about the most cost-effective type of foundation that you're going to construct for one of these buildings. So again, that was also good news that we weren't having to do something that would be more of a deep foundation. So before I go to the DSS site, does anybody have any questions on? That's the down and dirty, once over the world on what we found in the geotechnical investigation. The full report's included that you can read through, but I can answer any questions that you have on this site. These investigations are important to structural engineers, but they might not be the most riveting thing for other people to read. If you go to the next slide, I have it. So the next slide is the DSS site. As Patrick went over when he was talking through the scope, because we're not building a new building. We're not modifying the existing superstructure or foundations of the DSS building. We're not proposing any new foundations there. So we focused our evaluation on this site with 2 borings over by where the proposed maintenance shop and the Board of Elections building is. We found that same fill type material that I told you before that we found between 2.5 and 4.5 feet on the highway site. We found down to 6 feet on this site. So it's a little bit more required excavation and replacement with suitable material, but it's a smaller footprint. So if you have to find unsuitable material 6 foot deep on one of the 2 sites, this is the preferable of the 2 because the area of excavation is much smaller. Bedrock was deeper here, is 33 feet down. That's good to know. It's not going to affect our project probably in any way. The grade change, there's next to no grade change out at this site. It's a fairly flat site, so we weren't facing the same potential challenges we were on the other site. But that was where they encountered rock in the borings. And again, the recommendation is the same here: shallow footings and slab on grade. While we were doing the geotechnical investigation, we also went out and conducted an environmental survey, some soil sampling, with the intent to try to identify those unknown unknowns, the things that would become problems for construction. There's a lot of words on this slide. It's the soil report that I gave you. Essentially, they did find it was a similar finding of the hazardous materials. Nothing that was going to cause any kind of great pains. It was actually a fairly clean site for a highway site, especially one with fuel facilities and/or past petroleum storage on it. That was good news. The let's see, the contaminants that they found on the highway garage site, all that means for the excavated material is that you can either reuse it on the same site, or if you have to take it off the site, it's classified as, it has to go to non-hazardous landfill. So what usually happens there is they just use it on their daily cover over their landfill stuff. That is, it's a few dollars, you know, it's not as expensive as removing hazardous material to a hazardous material landfill, and it's not going to adversely impact the project. So the result of the environmental survey was very positive as well, considering the use of the site that we were investigating.
So that stuff can go to Rodman, right?
Not familiar with Rodman, but if it's
The dank facility?
What's that?
The dank.
Yes, it could go to landfill, and they normally use that as their daily cover when it comes in. So I'm not the environmental engineer, but I can answer some questions, and other questions, if I don't know the answer, I can get back to you.
How much of it? 2.5 feet?
Two different things. So the 2.5 to 4.5 feet are unsuitable structural characteristics. So the material there, it has cinders in it, you know, pieces of brick dust, things like that don't provide good, adequate bearing for you know, the loading of your structural slab and things like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's contaminated. That's the structural properties of that upper material needed to be removed. The soil that was sampled here, I'm not sure exactly at what levels they were, which exact soil samples had the contaminants in them, but I think it was pretty pervasive, you know, throughout the couple of borings that they looked at. So what I understood from reading the report was that, and what I understood from talking to our environmental engineer, was that any of the material that we excavated that we were not reusing on the site had to go to a landfill, and you know, could be discarded at a landfill, but it had to be non-hazardous landfill and generally used as daily cover, was how it was explained to me.
We don't know how much.
Well, we do have we did a preliminary grading plan. We haven't done the foundation design yet, so there's going to be some additional excavation there that will be replaced with imported fill. But we did come up with conceptual level numbers from our preliminary grading plan about how much cut, how much imported fill, and what quantity of fill was going to need to be removed from the site. I can tell you that on the highway garage site, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that was requiring some fill to be removed from the site because of that corner of the site that had to be cut down. So we weren't able to get that completely balanced because we had to make that change with the existing grade. But that's been included in the cost estimate.
Not to prolong this discussion, but did the other, the wash bay borings come back? The ones that were not back yet? Right, you know.
The report that I handed you, that has all of the soil samples.
I guess there was one page that said some of them, we were still waiting on those, but those came back.
The ones that in the report I just gave you?
The new one today?
That should have all the soil samples,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
There was a couple that had been left out of the big report you guys gave us.
Yes, I got you.
But
Everything's back now, and
as it should be.
that's the complete report, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, we're close to the end here. Back in effect, yeah. Forward. IT help all it. There we go. Okay, that's a little bit wavy, but as Chuck was going through some of that, I was just wanting to point out something that Gregory had mentioned earlier when he questioned the cost for the proposed highway garage. Keep in mind too, that cost is just for the building, less the site work associated with it. That's how things can kind of get confusing sometimes to people is, you know, you want to make sure you're always natural. Everyone here knows you want to be apples to apples. Somebody might be talking about they did a new highway facility and it may have been, you know, X number of dollars a square foot. Well, was that for the building? Was that for the building and site? Was that, you know, what did that number encompass? So roughly what we've got is we've got $4.4 million for the new highway garage, but then we've got $2 million in cost for the site work on just that, you know, side of the east road there. So you know, that could easily bring you up to $364 a square foot right there if you were to look at it as a total, you know, site and building. Yeah, you know, so I'm very confident that the numbers we have here, based on where we're at today, are good numbers. Will some of these be slightly higher or lower as we move into design development? Yes, but we're going to monitor that as we go through it, and we're going to track anything that's added that's not in the scope, and make sure we let the legislative committee know that, you know, if for some reason during the design development some of these departments are looking for more than what was in there, if it's going to affect the overall cost, where we don't have a balance of where we're deleting something and adding something, you know, we'll naturally keep you in the loop all the way through that. I won't go down through every item here, but as I mentioned, we'd factor in a 5% contingency overall, total construction cost being $17.2 million. Third-party testing is required by the state. We can't do that, and a contractor can't. Those are like compaction tests of your stone and so forth, and it can't be paid for by the contractor or anyone else. It has to be paid by the owner, the entity doing the work or having the work done, so that there's no foul play, basically. But naturally, we want to incorporate costs like that into the project. And then, you know, as a soft cost, because that would be during construction, and then the other cost in there would be the architectural engineering and construction administration, watching over the project all the way from this next phase right through the closeout, making sure that, you know, the as-builts are created and you receive all your, you know, operation maintenance manuals and everything else, and warranties are set up, and so forth. The number there for the architectural engineering and construction administration is inclusive of what we had already had for the concept phase. So that's for the overall, because that concept phase that you've already committed to, we're looking at that as part of this overall project. So we've included it in that number, even though it's already been basically paid for. Questions on the...
So Patrick, maybe Tim, how much of this stuff can be done in-house, like the demolition, the sign and welding shop, and the site work? Can any major portion of that be done by our in-house crew?
We can do all of it, but I will tell you that I'm very concerned about that. I took Ryan out today to show him, you know, with COVID last year, we did very little road maintenance. With the JCC project that summer, we did very little road maintenance. And every time we defer that road maintenance, because you're looking at our crew spending the summer right there and not doing what they need to do.
My concern is this is the prevailing wage, right? So if, as much as we can do in-house, you know, it's going to be a major savings when we don't have to pay prevailing wage.
And we are planning on, we discussed with Tim, is having them take down the cold storage building. And so that's listed down there under new highway garage. The existing cold storage building, the pole barn, is they're going to take that down and they would take care of that. The sign and welding shops are a little bit more involved. The sign shop actually is built on a steep cliff that's probably 15 feet.
About that.
15 feet from the lower edge. And you can see it in the site model, the actual cut. Chuck will pass that around again. But that's going to be a little more involved to take down. Now maybe the welding shop, we can, you know, look at that again and maybe say, hey, if we can take care of most of it, or maybe some of this comes right down to maybe you can do the trucking, you know, to, it might, we'll look at some of these.
So this is where the sign shop is. For those of you that looked, you saw this vertical wall over here. It looks very small on the model, but it's I don't know that it's 15 feet, but it's probably every bit of 10 or 12.
Yeah, it's got to be 10, 12.
Something like that.
Well, there's things, there's storage underneath.
Yeah.
And the floor system. So.
And the front foundation wall of that sign shop actually kind of acts as a retaining wall. Problem is when you take that sign shop away, it doesn't have the footers on the back end to resist that overturning. So you got to really be careful how you demolish that sign shop and sequence it right. Otherwise, you could have an issue with the soil up above it because you're basically taking away a retaining wall. So it has to be sequenced with construction. And if we're going to do what we're talking about doing here, still providing this access to the other side of the existing highway garage behind it, because there is a vehicular access to the underside there right behind the existing sign shop, and use that area maybe for some auxiliary parking. We're going to have to tie into an existing retaining wall that's there and extend that retaining wall around the corner. That's worked into the site numbers for the estimate for this site, but that area would be an area that I would caution against removing that risk from the contractor. I think it would be beneficial to have that within their contract. It minimizes risk to the county, and it sequences the work a little bit better with the other construction activities.
The other problem with us doing the work is scheduling, so that we don't hinder the contractor or slow the contractor up, because he's going to back charge us if he's ready to do something and we're not ready for him to do it. So I'm not saying don't use some help.
Right.
Just have to be cautious on which use the one that doesn't cost us money.
We'll sit down again, you know, with the building committee, with Tim, with you, whoever we want to put together there on that little committee, and we'll look at, is there anything that wouldn't affect the schedule? Right. Because we did know the cold storage barn could come down before the contractor even gets started, if time was permitting, you know. But we'll revisit that.
And we'll have to talk about that in terms of the constructability and the sequencing and phasing of the project anyway. contractors get the drawings, if we say something's existing conditions, it has to be existing conditions, right? So if we're gonna take down the cold storage building, when the contractor gets those drawings, that cold storage building shouldn't be shown in the drawing, or if it is,
There'll be an extra later on.
yeah, or it needs to have some indication that this is outside of their contract. And the contract limit lines need to be clearly delineated. So, this is all part of moving the project forward. But you're right, it's not something the more moving pieces you move into a project, the more you have to coordinate those pieces, otherwise you would run into problems later.
Okay, so last slide here, before some questions and answers, just overall, would be the schedule going forward. Be looking at design development, would be the next phase to the project, July and August this year. Construction documents, September through November, and then bidding the project out in December, which is usually a good time of year. I found out I've always had good successes. Contractors, some of them haven't, you know, lined up all their work for the following year. That's when most of the jobs start coming out, is in January for bid. After the holidays, we'd like to get it out before the holidays. They'll have time to look at it and, you know, and go through and put together all their numbers. Looking at awarding the contracts in January, and then this is where, going back to what Gregory said, is with lead times, is really pushing hard on the contractors. You've got to get everything submitted for your submittals, reviewed. You know, is this store acceptable? If it is, you know, get it ordered, you know, all that, because everything that we have in our documents have to be resubmitted by the particular contractor, because we might say Pella or Anderson windows are equal. They might have an equal window they buy from a certain supplier, and we've got to review that before they order it. We're going to review those quickly. They've always allowed 30 days to review those. I've never seen, most architects and engineers I've ever seen, they're not going to take 30 days. They don't want to slow anything down. You know, these things can be reviewed as they come in. Review them, get them turned around, get them back to the contractor. If there's, you know, an issue with it, then the sooner we let them know, they can resubmit. From there, it'd be looking at starting construction in March of 2022 and the substantial completion in March of 2023. Makes it sound pretty easy, right?
The highway garage?
Yes, everything.
Well, that's both.
Yes, the whole project. Yeah.
And we'll have to talk as we go into construction about how we would bid those. You know, and Patrick and I have talked about that, and I think that's something to decide, you know, with the county as we move it forward. Do you send this out as you know, one collective bid package? Do you separate it, but you know, as a separate contract between the two sites? You know, does one want to lead the other? Are we going to bid them at the same time? Those are all, you know, bidding strategies that we'll definitely go into as we move the project closer to completion.
What's the cost of a new, say the GSS building? What's the cost of a per square foot? Let's go per square foot.
I'd have to look at that. I don't want to say offhand without having everything in front of me. Because it varies. Square foot numbers, people throw them around a lot, and you know, you really got to look at, you know, specifically what type of building it is, and you know, yes, you know, looking at office buildings, you can, is site and work involved into it? You know, are you, you know, so throwing out a number is just, like I instantly just, as we were talking, went back and, you know, we doubled the square footage cost of the highway facility by just putting the site into it. So now somebody could literally say that's a $400 or $364 per square foot to build that, rather than, you know, the other number. So I don't know offhand, but it's going to be significantly more, because, and especially if you have a virgin site where it's got to be developed and excavated and foundations put in and substructure and all that, you're talking significantly more money.
I'll tell you that when you look at the Ed Center that we did, there really aren't a lot of frills on that project. Right. And so when you're looking at office areas, you know, and I don't remember exactly where we ended up there, but it was mid 200s in square foot cost, and that was with help from the highway department extending that water line and doing some of the, not all the site work, but some of the site work. There was a clear delineation. So that was a couple of years ago, and that really wasn't that an excessive cost for the time, for the type of building we were doing at 22,000 square feet.
Well, I mean, you have some costs in here.
This 225 right here for this human services building is much less than you would pay for that same building brand new.
Yeah.
Much less.
Yeah, I'll say much less, but I don't want to get into throwing around numbers that we can't
I
substantiate.
mean, the
Especially
biggest
with
number you
the
got in here is 350 in the vehicle wash bill.
Yeah, I think part of that is because of the type of construction it is. And
That would be
Patrick,
pretty high.
Yeah, it's a smaller building, you don't have just a wide open space, we're talking about concrete masonry walls with epoxy paint, you know, galvanized mezzanines to be able to wash from, that's where you can't, they're non-comparable.
Well, I'm just thinking in my head, if you said if I said 350 square foot for the DSS building, you'd probably say, well, that's probably high enough. Think that's enough cushion?
I think so.
yeah.
That's enough cushion for a new building?
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah,
to be honest.
no, and I wasn't trying to evade it at all, I just don't want to
No, I just wanna make-
quoted as.
No, I don't quote it either, I'm just saying that enough cushion.
Well, nowadays you're having contractors that are having a hard time committing to longer than 30 days on their quotes. I mean, over a 3-month period, we watched the price of steel go up by 10% every month, just over a 3-month period. So like you were mentioning earlier with the supply chains and everything, the pricing right now is pretty volatile. The good news about having Trophy Point on board, and it was one of the reasons that we brought them on the team. This is what they do. You know, they're a construction management, construction cost estimating company, and every time they have a bid come in, they go through those line items and they update their information, right? And so that better informs their next estimate and their next estimate and their next estimate. So in this type of bidding environment, that's a really good thing to have a company that's what they do. That's their expertise, is construction cost estimating.
Especially with a project of this size and so many
Right.
different, you know, we've got different buildings, like you said, from the wash bay to office area, you know, completely different, you know, animals.
And I'm personally using them on 3 different projects for the State University Construction Fund right now. So, you know, they've done a ton of cost estimating for us. In the last couple bids that we had come in, we had 3 of them, 3 bid openings on one day, and all of the bids were within. 2 of them were within 2% of the cost estimate. 1 of them was within 5%. So it was very, very close to what the bid openings were.
And that's with the current pricing?
With the current pricing. I mean, this was, let's see, what is it now? It's June. I think it was March. It was sometime in March we had those 3 I just remember listening in because they did it virtually. You know, it was, you don't go down to Albany anymore to watch the bid openings. You do it over the internet. And they went down through this Zoom meeting, and I was just, it was a pleasant surprise. But with all the up and down in the market, they came in very close to their cost estimates.
We just had one where the contractor said, boy, I can't do it for what I bid it for, and so we gave him some different money because we had some problems up front between award date and his go-ahead date.
Right.
You'll have some language in here so we know how long your bid's good for, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's generally in the front end documents. And
I've only had that happen once in 32 years, and it was a publicly bid project. And it was clear that they left a large number out, and, you know, will require a bid bond that holds them to, you know, their bid. And you can literally go after them, and if the next lowest bidder is, let's just say $200,000 more, they're responsible for that. Which, in this case, you know, everybody sat down and the owner decided they made a clear mistake. They literally just left half their number out. They were tallying up all these line items, left out, you know, 50% of what the next lowest bidder was, and they said, we're sorry, we can't do it. You know, and it could have gone back to their bonding company and the counsel, you know, for the client. They said, hey, you know, what are we gaining here? They made a mistake. The next lowest bidder is what the, you know, that's that's what the cost is going to be. And the next lowest bidder actually was within a percent or two of what our estimates were. And this was quite a while ago. You know, so it happens, you know, sometimes, but you just have to deal with it from there. We went on with the project, it got done, it was on schedule, it was on budget, everybody was happy.
But that language is in the front end
Yes.
documents. So.
30, usually 45 days. We can make it whatever you like. We can, you know, talk to Joan and you know, whatever we
The
decide.
award was what, January, and then they were really gonna start in March, was it?
Yeah.
Just like that,
Yeah.
It should be good through that period at least.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen everything from 45 to 90 days.
Fine.
And naturally, the quicker the better. Anything else? Hope I didn't take too much of your time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. I think we're gonna have some discussion.
Yeah, well, you just, if you think there's gonna be questions, we can stick around. If you'd rather have a more, if you'd rather want to have a more private conversation with us, we can get out, however you want it. Okay, do you want?
We're gonna take a 5-minute break, so if anyone.
Hey Ryan, this is your chief. Okay. You can keep that if you want. And,
That's it.
yeah, actually, you know, in